What's up, everyone? Welcome to Hollywood Unveiled, where we pull back the curtain on the Hollywood entertainment industry and get to know the people and stories behind the magic. I'm Jake.
And I'm Logan.
And Logan, in nomine Patri, Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
It's in here with us. I like how we both did our own thing there, but it worked in its own way.
Yeah.
Today we are talking about arguably one of the best horror movies of all time. I don't know if I agree with calling it best. I can agree that it's in the top 10 for best of all time. I'll give it that, just personally.
Iconic,
yeah. Certainly one of the 10 most iconic of all time. The Exorcist from 1973.
Yes.
This is such a creepy movie, and it's really wild to go back and watch now and seeing how much everything is just kind of taken from it.
Yeah, even myself included. I did a short film about an exorcism, and of course, everybody's going to borrow something from this movie.
Yes, and that's the thing. It's like it does a really good job at building this kind of contradicting atmosphere. If you've seen the movie, you're lulled into this false sense of security because we're just seeing this super innocent family life for a solid like half hour at least. And like the first supernatural thing doesn't happen really until like 40 minutes into the movie. Well, she has a few like little moments where it's like, you know, like her neck bulges in a weird way. But then the movie itself spends the next 45 minutes with all the doctors trying to be like, no, like this wasn't a supernatural thing.
Yeah.
No, it's not that kind of movie.
But you know what? I actually appreciate that because these days everybody goes straight like, up, something's weird, supernatural, right? But I actually loved that even in the face of something that is like us as the audience, we're like, oh, that's supernatural, right? We know, right? But then even the priest, as Regan is tied to the bed when he meets her for the first time, I think, and like things are moving, she's talking in different voices, and like the split pea soup and whatnot, and it came down to the holy water. Even he said, look, it wasn't even real holy water I was using.
Yeah, I told her it was.
He's going in with a very skeptical mind in that sense, trying to rule out mental illness and any other possibility.
They're doing everything they can to avoid actually calling it a demonic possession for the longest time. But I think that's one of the reasons why the movie works.
It feels very real in that respect.
It does. And it's expertly made. So The Exorcist, released in 1973, directed by William Friedkin, written by William Peter Blatty. And this film stars Ellen Burstyn as Chris McNeil, Max von Sydow as Father Marin, Linda Blair as Regan, Jason Miller as Father Karras, and Lee J. Cobb as Lieutenant Kinnerman. Now, supposedly, this movie or this book is based on an actual exorcism from 1949. As the story goes, he was mostly writing comedy at the time. Like he'd written a few comedy movies and none were, super big. So, he was still kind of just writing. He's like, he had read about this exorcism and he's like, there's a story there. And he jokes that, but I knew as soon as I started writing that book, I was effectively tanking whatever comedy career I could have had. So when Blatty finishes the script, he sells the rights pretty quick. But when he does, he insists that he gets to stay on as a producer.
Well, that's what you want.
Maintaining a bit of power there. Now, the studios had a couple different big swings for directors. They wanted Mike Nichols, Peter Bogdanovich, or Stanley Kubrick. None of those are bad choices, but they all would have been very different movies than what we ended up getting.
Yeah. Very interesting choices.
Yeah. But Blatty, he saw French Connection and he loved the grit that Friedkin kind of brought to that. So he was like, no. Friedkin's the guy pulling my producer card. Hey, get that guy. He's good. This was one of those weird movies where it's like, it is kind of centered around, a child. And you have to find a really good child actress for that. So there were only a few other names that were kind of tossed around that I find kind of interesting. One, the name might not sound familiar, but I guarantee you know her. Denise Nickerson.
You're right. It is not familiar.
Correct. She plays Violet Beauregard in the Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
All right. Yeah.
So she was one of the child actors that was in consideration for Regan.
Okay.
But her parents super troubled by the script.
Oh, I understand why.
Yeah. So
especially the director's cut.
Yes. So they pulled her from contention. Her agent sent it over. They were like, hey, like, you know, they like her and other stuff. She'd be a good fit. And the parents read it and they were like, absolutely not, and kind of pulled her from it. Janet Leigh, whose name you might recognize from the popular Psycho, she also refused to put her daughter up for it. Little actress,
what's her
Jamie
name?
Lee Curtis.
Oh, right. Yeah. How's she doing these days?
I think she's doing well. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So Janet Leigh, she was like, nope, like Jamie Lee's not doing this one, you know. But inversely to that, Linda Blair's agents, they read the script. They were like, no, this is not a good fit. Linda Blair's mom somehow got a copy of the script, read it, loved it. And she brought it to the agents to be like, this, we need to get Linda to do this. And the agents were like, oh, no, yeah, we read that. And we decided it wasn't a good idea. She's like, no. Like, Linda's read it. She thinks this would be fun. Like, this, we're going to like get her to do this.
Stupid agents trying to protect a child.
Yeah. So, you know, there was also a little bit of weirdness when it came to your priests. The big one the studio wanted was for Father Merrin. They wanted Brando. It's like, it's understandable. It's 1970s. Like, you're going to get Brando. Friedkin right out vetoed it. He's like, nope. You get Brando, it will become a Brando movie. So they instead get Max von Sydow. Hilariously, who's only 44, so they then have to put him in makeup to play the 80-year-old Father Merrin, at least.
Well, the thing about him, too, is that for the most part, you cannot really think of an exorcist priest without thinking of Max von Sydow.
It's very hard to, because he, with this one performance, you know, that's kind of why I chose that. Like, with the iconography he brings to it, with his performance, the gravitas he brings, he instantly makes what is really just a priest doing his job, an iconic character. So, like, he's fantastic for it.
And he's in so little of the movie, really.
He really is. Like, he kind of bookends the thing.
Yep.
Like, he's in the beginning, he's in the end. And I think that allows the audience to kind of forget about him a little bit.
Yeah.
So that by the time he shows up again, you're like, oh, right, this guy. Oh, this is going to be good. Like you know. Now, he had to sit in about 3 hours of makeup. And this is my makeup nerd showing.
Please.
So instead of doing prosthetics to age him, so this makeup artist was Dick Smith, who I believe won an Oscar for doing makeup for The Godfather, for Brando. So his patented method for old aging someone is an old age stipple. You would have someone like puff out their cheeks, and then you would paint like adhesive over that, and then let it dry, so that when they let the air out, the adhesive is now used to that stretched skin, and it adds all of these wrinkles. Yeah. So it adds a bunch of this, but it's really laborious and just takes a lot of time to do. So much so that he was actually in the makeup chair longer than Linda Blair on days where they shot together.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, with her, you're just paint her face.
It really is. When you get to like the end stages of her transformation, it's mostly just a lot of cuts and then just a paint job. There might be a subtle brow, but not a lot.
Some like applications.
But it's smaller pieces. So it's like, all right. Now, the other big change of the casting was actually with Father Karras. Studio really wanted Jack Nicholson. Imagine just how different this movie is if Friedkin had let them cast Brando and Nicholson.
Right.
What a totally different movie that would be. Instead of getting Jack Nicholson, which, you know, would have been really kind of an interesting switch, they go for Stacy Keach. Now, Stacy Keach, he's one of those, I call him those guys actors. Right. Kind of like the guy who plays Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day. You see him in stuff, you know his face, but you never know his name. By the way, I always like Ned Ryerson, Stephen Tobolowsky. Love that dude. So yeah, Stacy Keach, again, a great one of those guys actors. He's cast, but if you've seen the movie, you might go, well, hey, that's not who plays Father Karras. What's going on with it? William Friedkin saw this thing called the Championship Season, which Miller not only wrote, but starred in. And as soon as Friedkin saw that, he's like, that's the guy I want. So they literally bought Keach out of his contract to get Jason Miller instead. Friedkin was that enamored with his performance in Championship Season that he's like, Yes, this guy. I know we've already cast another someone. I don't care. Get him.
And I think his performance is pretty amazing too. So
he brings this like depth of sadness, this like wealth of grief. You know, he is the best kind of like, I don't want to say sidekick priest, you know, because he does kind of fall into that once Marin kind of comes onto the scene. He is the best kind of priest for a movie like this, which is a priest who is like this close to, or maybe has lost his faith. Like those are the most interesting priests for Exorcist movies.
You introduce this character who has to save someone, but you're like, how's he going to save himself in the first place? Like, I mean, you want that guy to save other people? He's barely hanging on himself.
Now, Friedkin is known for trying to be as realistic as possible. For example, on The French Connection, if you've seen the movie, there is a wild car chase scene at the end of the movie. They had no permits for that, quite literally. It was literally Gene Hackman weaving in and out of traffic. Jeez. And just every person they crashed into, they just paid. He is very much we're doing it for real, like, let's just get the shot. And because of this, both Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn got really injured on the set. Linda Blair actually fractured her lower spine. Jeez. So the scene, I believe, where Regan is literally like flopping back and forth like this on the bed, the strap that was like holding her in safely kind of broke. And because of that, like she got twisted a weird way and it like fractured one of her lower vertebrae. Burstyn got injured. I think it's actually the crucifix scene where Regan slaps her and she falls to the ground and she kind of screams in pain. That was Burstyn legitimately screaming in pain. Burstyn actually talks about the event, like her falling and getting hurt, in this documentary called Leap of Faith, which is just all about the making of The Exorcist. And she says that she was furious at Friedkin because after she fell and she was screaming, he told the cinematographer to tilt the camera down and make sure he got the shot of her before he called the ambulance. And it's stuff like that where it's like, dude, like, I get that you want your realism, but like you take care of your actors first.
Yeah.
Like you don't do that kind of thing.
You know, no matter what you're trying to achieve, the bottom line is this is all play. This is no matter the money that's on the line or any of that. This is play. This is make believe. If someone's getting hurt or you're violating someone's personal space, or you know what I'm getting at here.
I totally do.
It's not worth it. It's not.
No. And to go along with that, Friedkin would also, I kid you not, I found stories that he would shoot off a real rifle to get genuine startled reactions from the cast. Like there's one scene where Jason Miller is sitting in like, you know, Karras's little house or his little apartment, and he is supposed to be startled by the phone ringing. And without telling Miller that he was going to do it, Friedkin literally had a rifle. And like when he needed to be startled, he shot it off so that he genuinely was like startled. And Miller apparently came up to him afterward and was like, I don't need that guy. I'm an actor. I can play startled. Like, you know, but Friedkin was just doing that kind of stuff because he wanted the realism there.
Yeah. Yeah. And first of all, I hope they were blanks. At the very least.
That I don't know. Like, because it is the 70s. So who the hell knows?
Who knows? I feel that things like this can just, if that's what you want to do, have a conversation at the beginning.
Yes.
That's all. Like say, hey, I might throw some stuff at you, just so you know. And I'll hope you're okay with it.
Have an air horn.
I mean, starter pistol, maybe.
I mean, yeah, but again, you got to talk to your actor first.
Again, that's what I'm saying is a conversation. You know?
Yes. Now, to help with that realism, now in the scenes where, you know, the exorcism is happening, you can see everybody's breath. That is because they had these big air conditioners blasting to keep the set for Regan's bedroom as cold as possible. I genuinely found articles that said at some points it got to 40 below zero so that you could just see these pillows of just breath coming out as they are, you know.
That's impressive. Like, I'm impressed by that, honestly.
Like, I'm impressed by that. I give kudos to the actors. Like, and again, it's one of those where it really helps with kind of building that environment. Because I mean, you can't visually tell, but when you hit those scenes and you see everybody's breath, at least when I watch it, there is something that registers as like, that's interesting because that's real. Like, and it's, you know, and it's, and I can't pinpoint how I know, but you just know.
Yeah, and they didn't borrow it from Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic like they did in Fight Club either, you know.
Well, obviously. Now, something else that kind of goes with real for this movie. So one of the scenes that was very iconic, you know, afterwards, is when Regan pukes that like just lime green vomit right into Father Karras's face. But here's the thing. That was the first take, and it was an accident. The fake vomit was supposed to just hit him in the sweater, but the aim was off and hit him in the face. So his reaction of, completely genuine. Miller actually has a quote where he's like, my momentary reaction was I was a little pissed off. Because again, it wasn't the plan. It was a complete accident, but it works really well for the movie. And the vomit was pea soup and a little bit of oatmeal. You might think Campbell's.
Sounds tasty.
No. They apparently tried Campbell's and it was not the right consistency. It just wasn't quite right. So they had to go with a different brand.
Well, if you're going for split pea soup, I always say Anderson, just off the 5, heading north in California.
Now, as impressive as the physical performance of Linda Blair as Regan, especially in the final possession scenes kind of go, one kind of unspoken like performance that kind of goes to it is an actress named Mercedes McCambridge. And they're the voice of the demon. And I say the demon because, quick question, what's the name of the creature that possesses her in this movie?
Am I going to get a point for this if I answer it?
Well, we'll see.
Pazuzu?
I believe the name was Pazuzu, it's not right? Pazuzu, it's Pazuzu.
Pazuzu.
But here's where it's interesting. He's not name dropped as Pazuzu in this movie.
No. In fact, so much of this demon is not dropped at all about this movie.
Yes. A lot of it is in the sequel, which everyone is like, this movie sucks. But it still has, like, through cultural osmosis, everyone still knows the backstory and it still kind of plays into it.
In this movie, though, they really don't tell you much.
No.
Like, and they, in fact, I mean, they give you this whole opening scene that doesn't, at least on the surface, connect to anything that actually happens in the movie.
Correct.
It just implies dread.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think what that opening does really well is it not only builds dread, but because we know Marin is a priest, it builds a sense of religious dread, which like then when it transfers to the McNeils, you don't know why you still feel that level of dread. I also love Friedkin does one shot in this thing that is such a Friedkin fucking shot. And then I'll go back to talking about Mercedes McCambridge, where it's right after the first scene with Chris when she's filming on set. And the camera cuts to a wide shot of the campus. And then it starts slowly zooming in on one portion of the frame. And there's like a random person standing there, but then he walks away. But the frame is still kind of zooming in on the spot. And it's there. You can't tell who you're supposed to focus on. And it builds this sense of unease and tension. And then Father Karras walks into frame and he kind of looks back and go, oh, okay. They were going to, you know, he's the one who we're following. But like,
interesting.
It's little moves like that build this unease into the movie. Back to Mercedes McCambridge. So with voicing the character of Pazuzu, she has a joke that chain smoking helped, as did having a diet of raw eggs and whiskey, which, damn, like if that's
hard. That's some hard shit right there.
Yeah.
The power of podcast compels you to like, subscribe, comment to our channel. And if you're listening on all the podcasts, you please leave us a like and a review and let us know what you think. It really helps us out.
A lot. It goes a very long way. More than you think. Even if you're leaving a review just to be like, it was all right. And it helps. Lets people know that people are watching.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was it.
That's it. Now, here is something that I think is fun because it ties back to a previous guest of ours. Sound design plays a big part in building the atmosphere for this movie. Using some baby animal squeals was also used in this. For Regan, when she is grunting and moaning and writhing during the exorcism scenes, they actually took pig squeals and remixed that into her vocal sounds just to kind of off-put them a little bit and make them extra creepy.
Oh, very nice.
And one thing that I think is really great at subconsciously building the sense of unease that like you don't notice is that on the super low end of the acoustic spectrum, they put the sound of bees like swarming super low in the scenes where exorcism shit is happening, so that you like, I feel a sense of danger.
It almost has that effect of the string section, you know, that hum from the string section when you're trying to build that dread. But bees, nice.
Yes. So that is a really cool way to kind of build that tension, and have the audience just be at a sense of unease and not really know why.
Oh, do you know the name of the sound designer that did that? Is Bee Zuzu. Bees.
Get out.
I'll see myself out.
God, that was such a fucking Jesus Christ, Jake. No, that was a good one. I liked it. Now, with all of the creepy kind of atmosphere of the movie, the crew actually kind of believed the set was haunted. So they had a priest come in to kind of bless the set. Believe it or not, that is still a practice that is done to this day. When I worked at Warner Brothers, one of the movies that was filming there was Annabelle Comes Home, Annabelle 3, where, you know, all of the creatures from Ed and Lorraine's trophy room get out. And on the first day of filming, they were supposed to have a priest come to set to bless it before they got going. And I actually got to meet Ed and Lorraine's daughter on the lot that day, and kind of brought up the fact that, you know, they're supposed to bless the stage. And someone was like, oh yeah, but the priest's flight was delayed, so you know, couldn't make it. And without missing a beat, she goes, that's the devil's work. Which I'm like, all right, that was good. I like that joke.
I like that. I also like the idea of like a priest coming to the set of The Exorcist.
Yes.
with the content of it. And part of the blessing is to ask God to bless the set.
Yes.
And God going, no, I've read the script. I'm not putting my stamp on that. No.
Yes. Now, there is this kind of weird speculation about this movie that it is cursed in some way, or that there is some kind of evil surrounding the movie. Now, I will acknowledge a few of the weird things that kind of went around the film. So at one point, there was a fire on the set, that the set they built for the McNeil house completely burnt down, every part of it, except for Reagan's room. Reagan's room was completely untouched. And it's not like it was in a different part of the studio. Like, it was just, so it's like, all right, the one room that didn't burn down is the room where like the exorcism happens. That's kind of creepy and weird.
They did a lot of mock blessing in that room, so maybe
maybe
they accidentally blessed it for real.
Yes. 9 deaths are technically connected to this film.
You say technically, so I'm curious now.
Well, one of them, one of the actors in the movie, Jack McGowan, the friend who gets pushed out of the window.
Oh, okay.
The friend of Chris's who gets pushed out the window. He died like a week after the movie came out.
Oh.
So stuff like that, where it's like, all right, so it's kind of tied to it. One, this is very creepy with that. Did you know that there's a real like murderer in this movie?
Oh, no, yeah. I don't know that.
Yeah. So
like a cast member?
Yeah.
Oh.
yeah, this is the thing. So in the scene where Reagan is getting the medical procedure, the scan where like the male lab technician
the
is
needle
like,
in the neck and all that.
Yeah, where the male technician is like, here, hop up on the table, here, scooch down a little bit, do that. That guy, Paul Barrison, the radiology technician, about 6 years after this movie came out, he was convicted of murdering a film reporter. Yeah. So there's some stuff like that it's like, oh, well, that's not great. Like, that's not what you want to hear. Here's something that I find hilarious about this movie. So there was actually controversy around the fact that it was rated R, because family groups were pissed that the film wasn't rated X. Their rationale was if the film was rated R, that implies that a child can go to the movie if accompanied by an adult. X flat out means that the child cannot go. It's like, okay, like I do understand kind of that rationale. And this person wrote a whole article about it. And this article made such a stink about it and kind of said like Washington, D.C. is a big place where this could happen. So D.C. actually put out a press release in the 70s that threatened to arrest anyone who sold a ticket to this movie to any non-adult. But the MPAA stood by the rating. Basically, they said, well, this film has no nudity. And there's nothing really overtly, like there's no overt sexuality about it. So it only qualifies for an R. And again, going with our recurring theme now of sexuality being more prohibited to view than, than violence.
And I find this story really interesting because from what I understand, they're kind of secretive about how they do what they do because they don't want to come off as we are not a censorship group. We do not censor people because that's why when you get an R and you wanted a PG-13, they say, oh, well, we can't tell you why, right? We can't
tell you what you need to cut.
Yeah, we can't tell you
need to cut something.
Exactly. But what's really interesting about this is they kind of secretive about how they come to their conclusions in the first place, right? But part of what goes into it, from what I understand, is that their board, the board of people who make these ratings and decisions consists of, like you said, family groups, things like that, producers, all that, but also members of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that they were the ones to defend the R rating when other people are screaming for an X.
Yeah.
So in this case, props to them.
with all of this, the film actually, religious films did get the movie banned in the UK many times over the years. It was actually completely pulled from the shelves in 1988, although it was returned in 1999. Now, when the film first came out, sick bags were handed out because like, oh, it's so scary, so gross. We want to make sure you got your sick bag.
Yeah. I feel like that's partly marketing.
Yes. Well, and there's the story that I want to tell, and like she will deny it till her dying day, but I remember her telling me this story, and she now just denies it because it embarrasses her. This is the first horror movie my mom ever saw.
Oh.
And I remember her telling me that when she saw it in the theaters, her bladder was too scared.
Got it.
Which, like, I do get. If you're seeing this as a kid, 100%, you're relating with Regan, you're freaking the hell out.
Yeah.
But that story would have faded into obscurity in my memory, except for the fact that when I brought it up to my mom, kind of in a joking of like, oh yeah, like I remember you told me this story. I always thought that was so funny. She's like, I never said that. And that kind of hyper defensive where it's like, it's okay if you do. Oh, I didn't say it. I think that means you said it. Oh, I didn't say it. Was that, I don't know why my mom is turning into Nixon in this impression, but
I feel like you waited for a long time to put your mom on blast like this, and now you saved it for a podcast.
I mean, who knows? It's not like she's listening. We'll see. This is now the test. If I hear from her and she is very angry, then I know she's listening to the podcast.
Love this one.
Jumping back a little bit, speaking of like religious groups. After the movie came out, WB actually had to hire private security for Linda Blair.
Oh.
Because she was getting death threats. She was getting death threats from religious zealots because they thought her performance in the movie glorified Satan. Which
I'm sure that they didn't watch the movie either. They didn't.
Well, that's also like because legitimately, like her performance, like I'm sorry, glorify. At no point does it look like anything she's going through is cool. Like
looked awesome to me.
Yeah, like there is zero glorifying in any of that.
Oh yeah.
So it's weird that that's the reasoning that they're like, oh well, this is
look like so much fun.
Yeah, but film was obviously a massive success. It was actually nominated for 10 Oscars.
All right,
including like Best Actress for Ellen Burstyn, Supporting Actress for Linda Blair. I think Supporting Actor or Actor for Jason Miller. I'm not quite sure.
Special effects.
Like it was getting nominated for a bunch, but it only won 2.
Oh,
it won Best Sound and Best Adapted Screenplay.
All right, it was good sound.
I do kind of love that the guy who wrote the book and adapted it himself into the screenplay, then wins an Oscar for adapting his own material.
His screenplay he wrote was adapted off of the book he wrote. So there.
Yes. Hey, that's a donut. And as of 2010, the Library of Congress actually selected this film for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Can't deny it. We're still talking about it here, and it came out in the 70s.
Like we said, iconic.
Yes. Now, I don't know about you, Jake. So in my collection, I actually have Exorcist, the version you've never seen, which came out in the year 2000. And it has like a few different changes. Some of them are like different sound cues, like where it's like, all right, we're going to cut this line or we're going to transition to this audio cue. One that a big new scene that is kind of in there. So it's right after the hospital, right after Regan goes to the hospital for the first time. And it's the doctor telling Chris, oh, by the way, the swearing that Regan's doing is a little uncomfortable. Maybe she should kind of dial that back a little bit. And he kind of says, the swear that she says. Like that exchange in particular is there to set up the bizarre behavior a little earlier. Like in the theatrical scene, it's mostly just the doctor figuring out like, we're going to prescribe her Ritalin. Like we're going to get that figured out. I think that's a better option. It just kind of picks up kind of there. So it's this new scene that's kind of put in. There's also a few more digital effects when Chris comes home one night and all the lights are off. At one point, like Pazuzu's face shows up on a thing next to her. Like that's a new little scene. Something else that is kind of interesting, the spider walk, the creepy spider walk down the stairs. So that scene was cut at some point because you could still see the wires. So now they have digitally removed the wires so that she can come down the stairs faster. And they include a second take where her mouth was full of blood instead of when she has a serpent tongue.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the last two changes from this cut to the original theatrical kind of hit right at the end. So when Chris gives Father Karras's medal, he gives it back to her. It says, I think you should keep it. In the original cut, he just keeps it. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And it also includes a little thing of Regan smiling and waving at Father Dyer as they drive away. And I think that's kind of put back into more quickly established, like, hey, Regan's going to be fine. Okay. Like she's back to being her happy self. She's, she's kind of gotten through this turmoil and she's going to be okay. And the last change is, so in the original ending, it ends with a Casablanca quote. Yeah, the original theatrical ending, Father Dyer meets Lieutenant Kinnerman and Kinnerman invites him to the movies. And as they're walking off, he drops the, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And it's like, all right, well, that's a really corny kind of like one-liner to go out on a movie like The Exorcist with. But so what they do instead in this cut is as they are walking away, it just cues the Tubular Bells music and it just cuts that line completely. And it's like, oh, that's so much creepier, which is, it works really well. And on another fun note, like when we see the window where Karras kind of jumps out and kind of falls to his death, geographically, that fall is impossible. Oh, yeah. And Friedkin intentionally wanted it that way. He wanted it to, like, when people look at it to go, hey, that shouldn't be able to work. That's because it's the devil. Yes, he wanted that little bit of extra. And the movie, like I said, was a smashing success. It had a budget of $12 million and it made $441.3 million. Speaking of fantastic success, game time, you son of a bitch. That's right. We are heading into game time.
Well, I have God is on my side this time. So
let us hope.
Or Pazuzu, I'm not sure.
Well, either one could bring you victory. We'll see. So I got 3 questions for you. The last one is, as always, a multi-parter. Let's start with what I think is the easiest one. Question number 1. This film holds a record at the Academy Awards. Oh. What is that record?
Number of nominations for a horror or R-rated movie? I don't know.
Oh, so sorry. The record is actually the first horror movie to be nominated for Best Picture. Oh, okay. Yeah, which, like, that's the thing. I'm one of those people where it's like, people being like, well, Silence of the Lambs was a horror movie. No, it wasn't. Silence of the Lambs, you watch that now, it is a good HBO cop show pilot. Like, it is not a
thriller,
horror film
suspense,
at all. 100%.
Not horror, no.
This is a horror movie. Now, Linda Blair, kind of famously had a hard time kind of moving on from this role. And at one point, she kind of needed to poke fun a little bit at it. So she actually starred in a parody of this film. Your second question, what is that parody movie called?
This was the one with Leslie Nielsen, was it?
It is the one with Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, I don't have the title. I don't, but it was the one with Leslie Nielsen.
It is the one with Leslie Nielsen, and I want to give it to you, but Leslie Nielsen starred in a lot of movies.
A lot of parodies.
Yeah. This one was called Repossessed.
Good God. It is called that. I knew that one. Obviously not in this moment.
I kid you not. It's one of my favorite performances of hers because when she is full on possessed at the end, she's not playing it like Pazuzu. She's playing it like Beetlejuice. Yeah. And I love it.
Yeah. I do remember
that level of chaotic energy.
I remembered it just enough. I mean, to not know the title though.
All right. So this one is a little bit because of how you complained about how I ask questions that are outside the purview. No. I had to find as many ways to keep this directly tied to this movie.
Okay. I appreciate that.
There is a franchise that has been built out of The Exorcist. So for a possibility of 3 points, you have 3 questions built into this one. How many entries in the franchise are there? How many does Linda Blair appear in? And how many does Regan appear in?
Okay. I love that you asked as 2 separate things, Regan and Linda Blair.
Because there
Regan
is a
not
reason
played by
for
the same person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will give you a gimme. Repossessed is not on this list.
Okay.
So, yes, how many entries in the franchise are there? Let's start there.
I have no idea, so I'm just going to shoot in the dark. 5.
5. Very close. It's actually 7.
Oh.
So you've got The Exorcist, Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Then you have The Exorcist 3, which Blatty came back to write. And it's genuinely really, really creepy. Then there is a weird studio wild thing with a prequel to The Exorcist that was titled Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist.
I'm not sure I saw that. I might have seen this one. I'm not sure.
So he cast Stellan Skarsgård as young Marin, which is good casting.
Yeah.
Now, as this was going, the studio, they were watching the dailies. They did not like what they saw. So they fired him about 2/3 of the way through filming and brought in Rennie Harlan, the director of Die Hard 2. So he shot so much new footage that by the time they got to the editing room, it was an entirely new movie.
Oh, wow.
Like, still had Stellan Skarsgård, but that was about it. And that was released under the title of Exorcist: The Beginning.
Okay.
But the studio that owned Dominion, there was something weird with the rights and with the title, so they could still technically release their movie. So they actually brought Schrader back in because Exorcist: The Beginning tanked. So they brought Schrader back in to finish filming Dominion, finish a little cut, almost the Snyder cut, pre-Snyder cut, and release it, hoping to still make back their money. And it also still did not make back their money.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a whole saga around those two. Wow. So that puts you at 5. Well, then you have the Exorcist TV show, which was on Fox. And then the most recent film, The Exorcist Believer, that was actually number 7 in the franchise. So to the second question of that, how many of these entries does Linda Blair appear in?
Let's go with 3.
And correct. It is 3.
Shot in the dark, but I'll take it.
Yes. Spoilers coming up ahead. Yes, she appears in The Exorcist. She is, of course, the lead as well in Exorcist 2, The Heretic. And she does have a small cameo at the end of The Exorcist Believer. All right. So you got that one correct. So, of your points, you are at 1 out of 3. All right. Now, the final question, in that one, the last question, how many of these entries does Regan appear in?
4.
Jake, You are correct, my good sir. Yes. Once again, spoiler alert. And sorry, Jake, I know you haven't watched the Exorcist TV show, but I'm gonna drop a big spoiler on you. So throughout season 1 of the show, Gina Davis is like, I think my daughter is possessed. So she's kind of doing the Chris McNeil thing of like, I think my daughter is possessed. Like I need to do something about it. And then it turns out the daughter she thinks is possessed is not possessed. She's just hooking up with boys. It's the other daughter who she thought was the nice daughter who's possessed. So it's like, and that's like revealed in like episode 2, I think.
Okay.
But at one point, as kind of like a right before the last handful of episodes twist, like she kind of drops. She's like, yeah, I have some experience with possession. I changed my name. My name used to be Reagan McNeil.
Okay.
So Gina Davis is Reagan grown up, now having a family of her own and dealing with that. And so like prior to that, there is really nothing that directly connects it to the original movie other than just, hey, it's exorcism stuff. But like that is a twist that I'm like, that's really cool. Okay. I like that ties it in. And it's Gina Davis, who's a fucking brilliant actress.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like she's phenomenal. So like it's really cool to kind of tie her in with that. But yeah, Jake, this is a truly creepy movie. Builds atmosphere beautifully. I don't think it could be made under the same conditions that it was made today.
No.
Because Friedkin Friedkin was pulling a lot of stuff that in no way could be pulled today. Like just plain and simple, wildly putting people in danger. So yeah, safe to say, as we said, changed movies forever. Certainly changed horror movies and demonic possession movies forever.
Definitely. Clearly influenced me a little bit because, like I said, I've got a nice little short film, which I might drop the link in here. Why not?
Yeah. Well, speaking of that link, I think at this point it's time to ask, but Jake, where can people find that and you?
Well, you can find me at VFX2Go on all the socials. You can find my website, vfx2go.com. And hey, since we're plugging stuff, if you want to check out my little short film about a different type of exorcism, you can check it out in the link below.
Yes, I did makeup for it.
Yes, Logan did phenomenal makeup for it.
Guests of this show who were involved with that short. Like it is a really well put together short. Highly recommend that. Not just saying it because I'm biased.
It's called Here and After, and you can check it out in the link below.
Yeah.
And Logan, where can the people find you?
I'm findable. You can find me on Twitter at FilmGuy89, Instagram and Threads at FilmGuy1989. I have posted to Threads now. I saw you got your first one out there too.
Yeah, not my first, but first in a long time. So we're getting the ball rolling on that.
I'm also on Letterboxd at FilmGuy1989. Did a rewatch of this today. So hey, you can pinpoint exactly when we recorded this based on that.
Yeah.
And on YouTube, doing the various at-home table readings. We actually did a reading for The Exorcist. I believe I was like Father Dyer. Like I was a couple of the supporting characters for that one, kind of building out the supporting crew. But it was certainly a very creepy script, and it built the atmosphere really well. I don't recall who played our Reagan, but they found a primo video filter to look as creepy and possessed as humanly possible. So it was great.
Nice. And as always, link in the description below.
Yes, link down below.
How do we end this, Logan?
The power of podcast compels you.
I'll go with that.